Do you ever think about the best moment in your life? I'll never forget the first time I went to the beach. I remember the car right there, looking at the palm trees. The breeze put me right to sleep. When we got there, the sky and the water blended into the perfect hue of blue, without a cloud in the sky. The breeze kissed my face as I looked at the calm water, and I just stood there, mesmerized, soaking it all in, carefree and light as a feather. It was a beach similar to this one. That beach was paradise. And it's also amazing the way we experience things as children. We just let go and allow ourselves to be free. Unfortunately, not everyone has the liberty to experience unencumbered freedom. Some of us experience certain events which influence us in profound and permanently altering ways. It's as if they leave us branded for life. Sometimes, these events could even kill us. Racism happens to be one of those events. I'm the first in my family to go to college. My freshman year, I met with my advisor to discuss going on externship. Now picture a man who looks like Santa Claus. However, the following comes out of his mouth. You are a woman and you are Hispanic. You're gonna end up sweeping outside some company somewhere. I will not sign off on it. His words were full of conviction and matter of fact. I left his office like a deflated balloon, the hopes and dreams sucked out of my 18-year-old self. I went back to my room to hug my Winnie the Pooh and talk to my roommate. That was only the first of many racist incidents I encountered in higher education. I quickly learned that the key to surviving was to embrace my feelings and talk to a friend. As if for a rite of passage, I had a similar experience my first year of doctoral school. A highly regarded professor informed me that I was light years behind the rest of the class. His demeaning claim made me question whether I even belonged in a doctoral program. The truth is, I had some marked differences from my cohort. I was the only person of color in the School of Psychology, beside the maintenance staff, that is. I also had to work full-time while I went to school and take care of my mom who had Pompe's disease. I was different, but not light years behind the rest of the class. Spoiler alert, I did become a doctor. Now fast forward to my third year of doctoral school. We were in trauma seminar, some classmates and a professor who was my research advisor. And we were talking about the trauma of the Holocaust. And my research advisor says, Charissa, didn't you guys have Trujillo? We were indoors, but it was like all of a sudden, the skies parted, the sun started shining, and it was like, oh, this is all in my head, of course. And I said, yes, we did. And it all came full circle. There's no greater oppression than a dictatorship. And that became my doctoral dissertation. I conducted a study with 15 older adults, including my grandmother. This generation survived the horrific dictatorship from 1930 to 1961, known as the era of Trujillo. For me, grandmother, abuela, is synonymous with hero, and this is her here. Now, this generation survived a dictatorship the moment, not just her, but the moment I mentioned the name Trujillo, all 15 participants, their faces became distorted. It was almost indescribable, and it almost brought me to tears. And actually, I'm not gonna lie, behind closed doors, I actually cried a few times. So after 15 interviews, this is some of what I learned. During the era of Trujillo, there was a unique fear. Sometimes anochecía, pero no amanecía, which means dusk came, but some never saw dawn. Now let's hop in the DeLorean and take time travel to 1937. If you were asked, any of you here, to say the word perejil, could you say it? Could you? If you couldn't, you were dead. In 1937, in about 5 days, yes, 5 days, 20 to 30,000 Haitians and darker-skinned Dominicans were killed for the color of their skin in Trujillo's attempt at ethnic cleansing. Men, women, and children alike were killed with all sorts of weapons, including axes and machetes. Participants recalled watching corpses and dead body parts in the streets of the Dominican Republic. The border of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, which is a river, became blood instead of water. On one side, we have the island of Hispaniola. On one side, it's the Dominican Republic. On the other side, it's Haiti. The red line is the river, and it also represents water in this case. And I also have a close-up. This is present day, what the river looks like. It's called Rio Massacre for all the deaths that have happened. It's actually not for the Haitian genocide massacre, but there were many deaths there before that, there as well, during colonization. I want to tell you a story that my grandmother told me about this tumultuous time. She was a young girl at the time. Her and her mother went to sell baked goods close to a Haitian neighborhood. And she told me that she overheard her mother talking to a Haitian man, one of the residents of these neighborhoods. And she said she will never forget their conversation, and neither will I. Her mom asked the man, "What are you going to do?" And they were talking about the genocide. And the man answered, morir peleando, which means die fighting. That story is the one that pulled at my heartstrings the most, but it's only one of 14 others that were just as touching. I also want to underscore that this is the first time that the participants spoke about their traumatic experiences. And they probably spoke to me because they knew my grandparents, and this implicitly created a sense of safety for them. And 100% of the participants reported feeling positive affect after the disclosure, including relief. Now, this research taught me more than the Dominican people's experience during the era of Trujillo. This research, although there were some vast differences between myself and my elders, there were also many similarities. One being that I implicitly learned to keep quiet just as they had. This work taught me invaluable lessons about myself, my family, my culture, and my identity, and I would like to share those with you. Number one, do not let anyone tell you who you are or are not. With racism, someone with a preconceived notion will try to diminish your sense of self by telling you you are inferior. If I had listened to certain individuals on my educational journey, I would not be standing here in front of you today. Number two, learn to sit with your feelings and have a support network. Marinating in our feelings can be uncomfortable and difficult, but it is necessary. And number three, and the one I have been neglecting the most before this research, break the silence, but do so on your terms. Research shows that disclosure of traumatic events is salubrious both physically and psychologically. Similarly, this research supported that breaking the silence even decades later was healing and empowering. Unfortunately, in my situation, I was too afraid and I kept quiet, which is what I want to impress upon you the most. Break the silence, but do so on your terms whenever and however you can, even if it's years later in a TEDx talk like today. Even if you're a survivor of a dictatorship, decades later, and you trust a doctoral student with your stories, break the silence. Even if you are a Haitian during a genocide and you confide in a friend that you would rather die fighting than give up, break the silence. Even if you are handcuffed and facing the ground with a police officer's knee on your neck, and the last words you can say are, "I can't breathe," break the silence. Because that can be the beginning of a racial revolution and change for future generations. You see, silence fuels oppression, and breaking the silence can be the beginning of eradicating oppression, racism, and fear. If you let go of your truth, it will no longer hold you hostage. You will no longer be enslaved to the shackles of fear and shame. I have broken my silence, and as a psychologist, I help others do the same. Today, I leave you with this. On what terms will you break your silence?